Hello, welcome to the fourth episode of Solid Principle course, Interface Segregation Principle. In this episode, you will learn how to apply interface segregation in your code base. If you are planning to have a large-scale application or your code base getting complicated, you need to know this principle. Interface segregation has synergy with other solid principles as well, like single responsibility principle, dependency inversion. For example, you're following interface segregation. Automatically, you're following single responsibility as well, because you're splitting your interface into smaller functionalities. Yes, that's the definition, splitting big interfaces into a smaller one. More focused clients, focusing on functionalities. For example, you have a big interface, you need to identify those functionality and splitting them into different interfaces. And they can have their own implementation. And from user perspective, it's also easier to interact with the contract you define with the interface. One example in software development could be payment gateway implementation. For example, we have different type of gateways like Google Pay, Apple Pay, for example Square, and they support certain functionalities like applying discounts, generating invoice, or getting the balance. These are different functionalities, and if you could identify a new software, you can split them into different interfaces and implement it as needed, and not applying all of them for all the gateways, and some of them may not support those, which make the code base difficult and hard to maintain, and so many other problems which get more serious in long term. I'm going to show you some real-world example about interface segregation and showcasing violation and following this principle, and then we can understand this principle better. What I'm going to do first is showcasing the violation of interface segregation by the example I mentioned earlier about gateways. Now I'm going to implement this interface with limited functionality. As you see, this payment method implementation only support generate invoice functions, not others, but we are being forced to override them. That's not what interface segregation said. If we have such violations in real-world projects, we may face more serious issues. For instance, tightly coupling means everything's depend to each other, and it's very hard to maintain that kind of project, and even make it hard to write the test for that class, hard to maintain, and many other issues we could face on such projects. So I would say this principle is very important and we have to follow it, especially for those projects are in large scale. Let's continue the example by implementing it in the correct way by following interface segregations. So we want to split these payment gateway interface into smaller ones. I would like to create separate interfaces for each of those functionalities, like this. To follow ISP, I broke down the big interfaces into smaller ones. This way I have more focused interfaces. Now let's have a few implementation of them. I created a Square payment gateway class to implement payment processor and balance checker, because Square only support these two. PayPal is another payment gateway we support in our system, and it has more functionality. As you can see, by following ISP and splitting a big interface into a smaller one, we have more flexibility. The implementation is more focused and clean, and the user of those interfaces can understand the system better, because each interface is focused on a specific functionality. At the end, I would like to emphasize on the benefits interface segregation principle bring to large-scale projects. For example, you can create reusable component easily by following this principle. Or when you're working on a task, it's less likely to have merge conflicts. And obviously, unit testing is much easier because you have smaller classes. And the implementations are simplified, and swapping the implementation is easier. Hope this video helped you to understand interface segregation principles better. If so, please like this video and subscribe to the Otago channel. If you still have some questions, please write it down in the comments. And if you have any feedback about the channel, we are happy to hear. I'm Ali from the Otago channel. See you till next video.